Hi, everyone. It's Liz Hector from Project Skills Mentor, and I'm back with the secret of my success. Today, we're going to hear from Martin Fenlon, and he's going to tell you the secret of his success, but more importantly, how that success can be translated into something you can use. Let's hear from Martin. Welcome, Martin.
Oh, thanks for having me, Liz. Appreciate it.
I want to tell everyone what you've been up to lately. You've written a book called A New Sheriff in Town. And I have to say, I was at your presentation for that book, and I'm so excited to receive my copy from Amazon because it was great. So much important information every project manager and every team lead needs to know about. In fact, I would say if you're working on a project or project adjacent, you need to know about this because so few of us have a fresh start in life. This is information we all need. And I think you're finding that as you're doing your book tour, right?
Absolutely. There's been a great response. And, I actually wrote the book after presentations at many PM webinars and other things where people said, gee, I wish you had a book out on this topic. So I finally did.
Yeah, I wish you'd had it out 20 years ago when I was facing some of the problems. But let's get right into it. The secret of your success. My first question for you, Martin, is what's the secret of your success?
Sure. I would say the short version is understanding why and how, why we're doing certain things and how things work.
So we're going to have to get into that a little bit more. But first, let me ask you, how did your career start?
I was a junior officer in the Navy, and our ship was in the shipyard. The captain of the ship put me in charge of the weapon systems. It was a crash course in project management. I got to learn to read PERT charts that were hand drawn, believe it or not, and also had to learn about influencing without authority, since there were multiple contractors and government workers as well as other military involved. And then after leaving active duty, I ended up with a defense contracting firm in Connecticut, and I was working on my MBA at that organization. My manager said, gee, our customers are having to shift their focus from pure research and development to actually managing projects to transition this research into active computer systems, software programs, etc. And so I became his project management consultant and ended up building a project management practice from it. I had just under 60 members on my team. In today's dollars, it would have been about a $20 million a year practice. And so I developed and ran that for a 15-year period.
Wow, quite the career. Now, one of the things I like to talk with people about is what was the biggest impact on your career? And I'd like you to focus on that in general, but can you also talk about this influencing without authority?
Absolutely. So, I was working as a consultant. And probably the biggest impact was I had started in my undergraduate career as a civil engineer, and for a number of reasons ended up shifting majors. So I was working in an engineering job doing engineering work without having an official engineering certificate. So I went to my boss and said, hey, I'd like to go to college and finish my engineering degree. Here's a tuition reimbursement form. And he tore it up and threw it in the wastebasket. And I said, what'd you do that for? He said, well, by the time you get that done, you won't need that degree anymore. You're already doing engineering work. You need to get an MBA. And so he had me sit down and map out what my 3, 5, and 10-year goals were for my profession. And we talked about it, and being a manager, wanting to be a manager, I needed an MBA with that organization. And that led to the consulting practice I eventually built. So since then, I've always worked with my subordinates, my team members, and as part of the review process, had them map out their 3, 5, and 10-year goals. And it's been a key, I think, to my success because number one, it shows that I'm interested and invested in my team members' professional development. It helps us put together a plan for that development in the direction they want to go. And I think it's been rather successful. Just in my last stint with CGI, 11 of my team members have been promoted to vice president in the last 3 years.
Wow, that's something. CGI is a great company, but if you can do that, you're moving mountains. Now, I'd really like to hear about some more about these lessons learned. It might be related to this plan you had with your team
Mhm.
to create these long-term visions for themselves, or your lessons learned might be something else. And I'd like our listeners to really pay attention to these lessons learned. So what do you have for us, Martin?
Well, I think the key that I learned, particularly as I was building the practice, I was bringing in individuals with different backgrounds. So we built a project portfolio management software package from scratch that was very successful in the government area. So I had software developers, I had business analysts, I had former Navy engineers like myself who were leading teams of individuals. We had junior people right out of college. And what I quickly discovered was everyone is different. And my management style needed to adjust for that. Later, I learned that it was called situational leadership. So actually, learned a little bit more about it, got a little bit better with my folks, went and studied situational leadership, and I've been applying it ever since. And I found that that's been particularly useful in the consulting realm, again, where we primarily have influence but not authority, because we're the outside consultant. So, working with a client, I need to adjust my style, my communication approach, based on the maturity of the relationship, the maturity of the individuals involved, and our goals. So that flexibility and being willing to adapt, I think was critical to my success as a consultant.
Well, I think that's clear. And I just want to say for those who are wondering about Martin's background, he's also the president of MSD Games. So what you're seeing is one of his game backgrounds, which shows you also that these lessons learned can be applied to virtually any situation, right? Project management, but gamification also.
Absolutely. And we built a small company with a factory. We had part-time and full-time workers, but absolutely worked as well. We had many people who were very skilled at what we needed them to do, that didn't have a high school education. We had other folks that had master's degrees in fine arts that were sculpting figures and doing the artistic work. So again, how each individual was handled and brought into the team required that situational leadership.
And that sounds like it ties into what you've learned from that, your lessons learned leading to the success you've found. Can you talk about how these lessons learned have influenced the success you have today?
One of the key things is, and as project managers, we know we may, lead a team. We can, be a coach if we want to use that term as well, but it's the team that succeeds. And so we have to bring the team along, and our team, again, a project is a temporary activity. So, we're going to go through the forming, storming, norming, performing stages, etc. And we should be adjusting our style as we do that. And that's regardless of the delivery methodology. Through my decades, I've used all sorts of different methodologies from classic waterfall through agile, with many of the stops in between. Um, and they all work in the right situation, but they all don't work in the wrong situation and with the wrong team. And so being willing to step back, assess where we're at, assess what's working and what's not, and being willing to, maybe raise your hand and say, hey, I think, we need to change for the following reasons. And many times as a leader, that means, hey, I chose the wrong methodology. We need to step back and maybe adjust our approach. That's key to being successful. Some may call it servant leadership. Certainly there's aspects of that, but again, it's the team that wins. If there's a fault, it's with me, the project manager.
That is truly leadership. So, what would you say you have as an example of advice for yourself from your past or for others who might be watching today?
One of the keys is there's going to be disappointments in our career. We're not going to get the project we want. We're not going to get the promotion we think we deserve. We may not make the sale or get the contract that we're pursuing. We may not get the right person on our team that we think is key to our success. And we need to accept that. There's no rule saying that our professional life is going to be fair. we shouldn't be, bitter about it. We may, have a trusted, colleague or mentor that we can vent our feelings with, but then we need to move on and we need to get the job done, regardless. And, I can honestly say as a 20 something, that was very difficult for me to do. Particularly when, I had some clients who wouldn't take our consulting advice. And I would vent. They hired me to teach them how to do this. Why aren't they doing what I tell them to do? But with experience came a little bit of wisdom, and I'm not in their shoes, and they may have very valid reasons why they make other choices. So I need to accept that. I need to get my team to accept it, and we need to work from reality, not where we wish we were. So I think that's been a key lesson that it took me a while to learn, but once I did, things really took off.
Yeah, Mel Robbins talks about that as being
Mhm.
letting people go, accepting people for who they are, and not being mad at them for who they are is a part of a process of making your own life easier. It sounds like that's the lesson you've taken away, but very good point. So what's next for you? I know you have a lot of irons in the fire. What's
Mhm.
next for you, Martin?
Sure. Well, currently I'm working on my next project management book, which will refer to software quality for project managers, rather than from a QA or a developer point of view, how project managers can influence the quality of the software their team is producing. And then I have some other game projects connected with my little side business as well.
It's always good to have a side hustle. Well, thank you, Martin. And if all of you are interested in Martin's book, A New Sheriff in Town, how to basically deal with the fact that we don't always have a fresh start on projects, be sure to look at the links below. There's a free workbook you can download and also access to his book, which has a great price on Amazon. So check that out. And I'll see you next time on ProjectSkillsMentor.com. Bye-bye, everybody.